Let's make a homemade buttermilk pie. This recipe is my mom's recipe. This is one of her favorite pies, and it's so good. Okay, I'm starting off with a homemade pie crust, and this pie crust is the one that she's always used, and it calls for shortening. If you want to use butter in place of the shortening, go right ahead. But my mom uses this recipe from CRISCO, and she actually has an old clipping from like a magazine or a booklet that she used to have, and the original CRISCO recipe is 3/4 cup of CRISCO, 2 1/4 cups of sifted flour, a teaspoon of salt, and water. I'm using a dough cutter to just cut in all of the shortening into the flour and salt mixture. And when adding the water, the ice cold water, my mom loves to use a spray bottle. This was something she learned long ago when she used to take home ec in school, and she said the teacher would spray in the water and explained that this would also yield a very flaky, tender crust, and it helps you to not overwork it. Okay, so just cutting in everything, and eventually you're going to end up with this very crumbly, wet sand texture that you can kind of press together. So this crust, my mom says that you really shouldn't roll it out. It's more of a press into the pie plate. So that's what I'm going to do. I am going to add most of it, but I want to create a base, so I'm just going to add it in, and then I'm going to press it out with my hands. Eventually I'm going to use the bottom of my measuring cup. And there will be leftover pie crust dough. You can save that later for a crumbled topping. You could toss in some sugar to make a very sweet crumbled topping, which is probably what I'm going to do. So a little bit more, and I'm going to press in the sides. And I'm working with a 9-inch deep dish pie plate. That works for this recipe. And if you want to divide this recipe for the pie crust in half to do a top and a bottom layer, you probably could do that, but it's just going to be a thinner crust. Okay, so that's what was left over. I'm going to just save that in the fridge for later use. And I am going to put some cling film over my pie crust and let it rest and cool in the refrigerator until I need it. And actually, I made this yesterday, so because I got interrupted and we went out for dinner, so here we are today. So buttermilk pie. In a large bowl, I am going to add 1 1/2 cups of buttermilk and a full cup of sugar. I'm using a low-fat buttermilk, but if you use something like full fat, that probably works a lot better. Okay, so I'm going to start combining and adding in the wet ingredients. Here I'm adding 3 large eggs. Here I'm going to add a 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I'm also going to add in 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and I'm going to add maybe 1/8 teaspoon of nutmeg. And another ingredient that my mom likes to add is a tablespoon of fresh squeezed lemon juice. I'll say that's optional because I don't have fresh lemon juice, so I'm leaving it out. Now with a whisk, I'm just going to combine everything very well and just give it a whisk to make everything light and fluffy and combined. Now I'm going to shake in 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and I'm also going to add a pinch of salt. Maybe like a 1/4 teaspoon works for this. Once everything is combined well, I'm going to add right into my chilled pie crust. And I'm just going to scrape everything in. You'll want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And now I'm going to bake this for around 55 minutes to an hour, or until it's done. And it still should have a little jiggle to it when you take it out. But this looks wonderful. So I am going to let this cool, but look at this, just like my mom's, and it smells amazing. And buttermilk pie is so versatile, but see how it jiggles? You want that slight jiggle. Okay, so now the hardest part. You gotta let it cool off. So I let the pie cool for about 30 minutes or so. It's probably still warm, but I'm okay with that. I'm gonna dive into this. By the way, slicing around 2 to 3 slices helps the first slice come out easier. And here we are. Homemade buttermilk pie. Some people call this southern buttermilk pie, I don't know. It's so good. It's one of my favorites, and this is my mom's recipe. And it never fails me because it's so good. I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.